Now, in this month, the month before the yes, notice that there's, I suppose a relatively lengthy time frame between when I have the idea and then I actually, process it, mull it over. It really is, because notice it was not something that I wanted to do. This is like the primary point, when I say to let the story by itself, it was like this intuitive nudge, and sometimes your intuitive nudge might not make sense to your mind. It might not actually be something that you think you want to do. You might be rejecting it, pushing it away, like resisting it, as I obviously was. And so, this month period where, points 1 to now 8 that I've made, if you haven't watched those, you want to go and refer to those points. It's like all of these were like the internal processes that was shifting my mindset and idea of like listening to this unknown voice, right? Leaning into the uncertainty, leaning into the unknown, leaning into this voice that, if you say, you hear these common phrases of like, faith over fear, just trust that voice within, listen to your intuition, follow your intuition. But what does that actually mean in the logistical, right? What does that actually mean played out? Well, this is literally the blueprint. This is literally the map that I've laid out here in points 1 to 8 and have 2 more points to make. It's literally in this that this month-long process eventually became condensed or compressed into 1 week. And that's when I go from Toronto to Barcelona. And then even one night when I go from Barcelona to Malaga, right? So you notice that each time it's like this process takes a shorter amount of time because there's less internal processing. And I start moving more in flow because suddenly the inner voice, it's like, I don't have to question it as much. I simply go from idea to action. And this is where the 19-month journey unfolded, right? With more ease, where suddenly it was just like, I always say that the first 3 months of this journey were really the steepest learning curve, because this is really the points where I was having to almost expand myself in a way, or get my mind on board with a voice that didn't necessarily make sense to me. And so by the time that, I was hopping on the ferry over to Morocco on a one-way ticket, right? It was like suddenly now it became more second nature to me. So in many ways, this month-long process was a process of surrender to listening to that inner voice, to that inner nudge, that intuition, that sometimes it's not always easy to just hop from idea to action.